Hi, I'm Gabby Bernstein.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Farnoosh Tarabi.
Hi, this is Christelle Lynn, and you're listening to me on
That's
Total
Total
Mom
Mom
Sense.
Sense.
I want lipsticks for everyone. Even when I was making foundations.
We've been building these direct-to-consumer media brands, and I really thought there was a space for a more storytelling, premium-led video brand for women.
Started a beauty brand out of my apartment, and now to be a Black female founder at Unilever, there's been some incredible key learnings.
Perception that motherhood softens you. Mm-hmm. It has softened me towards them.
Right.
But it has toughened me like nobody's business.
I believe parents have a superpower, our intuition. I call it our mom sense, and it applies to dads too. Hi, I'm Kanika. I love storytelling and a good interview. I began my career as a television anchor and executive producer for CNN. I am now an entrepreneur and podcaster. What am I most proud of? Being a mom of 3, including twins. Tune in wherever you listen to podcasts and on my website, KanikaChaddaGupta.com, and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Stay strong and see you soon. Cassie, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. I'd like to give a shout out to Sarah Harden, who made this happen. So hi, Sarah. We love you. Okay. I wanted to open our discussion with Ramanujan because he was such a rare breed and a born genius. He never had any formal training in math, but went on to discover the most groundbreaking findings in the field. The one thing was that he was obsessed with not having enough time. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, especially those who are overachievers. How would you recommend we deal with those sentiments?
It's an issue because it's so prevalent. So this feeling of having too much to do and too little time is what I refer to in my research as time poverty. And even if you haven't heard that term, I'm sure so many can relate to it. I mean, we conducted a national poll that showed that nearly half of Americans feel time poor. They feel like they don't have enough time to do what they set out to do. That's a lot. And yes, we find that moms tend to feel more time poor than dads, and working parents, particularly folks whose partner is also working, tend to feel particularly impoverished. But in our data, we find that all types of people, even those who are not working for pay, as well as those who don't have kids, sort of suffer from this hectic pace of life with too little time. The research shows that when we feel time poor, it makes us less healthy. So we are less likely to go to exercise. I mean, I'm sure so many can relate to, like, that's often an excuse is like, why am I not exercising? Because I don't have time. It makes us delay going to the doctor. I can personally say that I injured my wrist in October and I still haven't gone to the doctor because I feel like I don't have enough time.
Oh no. Yeah.
It makes us less nice too. When we're in a hurry, we're less likely to slow down and help others out. It makes us less confident in being able to achieve what we set out to do. And it makes us less happy. And it's that I'm particularly concerned about is the effect on our emotional well-being of these heightened feelings of stress and overwhelm and unhappiness and dissatisfaction and burnout that comes from feeling like we don't have enough hours in the day to get it all done.
Time as it relates to our age. Why is it that kids and the elderly are the happiest?
Kids, because they're not in a rush. They are in the present moment. They are just absorbing and experiencing and not sort of struggling with that burden of responsibility. As we get older, and among older folks, they experience greater happiness from ordinary experiences. And that really comes from recognizing that our time in life is limited, right? Actually, the pandemic has highlighted to all of us just how fragile life is. And when we recognize that our years are finite, what it does is it makes us feel that our time is so precious. And so we found in our research, we looked at the happiness that people experience from ordinary versus extraordinary experiences. Ordinary being those simple moments, like that moment shared with a loved one, at the breakfast table, or noticing the sunrise, or savoring that delicious cup of coffee or delectable, glass of wine. Versus the extraordinary experiences are, these like once in a lifetime vacations, the getting married, going to an incredible, like world famous restaurant. What we see is that extraordinary experiences make everyone sort of happy, regardless of age. But it's really, as we get older, those ordinary experiences produce greater and greater happiness, such that among older people, because of that recognition that time is finite, our time in life is finite, that makes us savor more. But it doesn't require age to have that effect of delighting in and recognizing the joys that are right there in our everyday life.
You're so right. And I think that's what's so profound about your book. On a personal note, my mom was recently diagnosed with dementia. And it's been really hard on my sister and I and our whole family. She is inherently happy, is just kind of basking in the joy of all the ordinary things. Like when we just are enjoying a cup of tea with her or holding her hand. It's so important to think like that. And the fact that you wrote this book, you're helping us do that and realize this universal truth earlier on in our life.
The purpose isn't to make people think about death. The purpose is to make people make the most of their lives and recognizing that we must, right? Because we don't want to end up with regrets. And I'm sure, with your mom, it's her joy that she's experiencing the moment of holding your hand, but you also recognizing that this is finite and your time with her, in fact, is. And so leading you to savor those moments, to make sure that you create those moments, despite the busyness of all of our days with the kids and the jobs and the everything else. It's so easy to be like, I'll do that later. I will go visit her later, and sort of pushing it off for those important things, making it happen now.
So Happier Hour as a title is brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm super into all things self-help. And so I have other books that I'm sure, they definitely played into your research: Designing Your Life, Find Your Unicorn Space by Eve Brodsky. And I love that this is now also on my shelf. And what do you think, readers are going to glean from this book as it relates to others and how they're all very connected, but distinct at the same time?
We have agency in our happiness. And also, I want to say that when I'm using the term happy, I'm not talking about a sort of fleeting, frivolous, selfish pursuit. What I'm talking about is experiencing more joy in our days, as well as satisfaction about our lives. So it is experiencing a sense of positive emotion, as well as a sense of meaning about the days that we're spending and the lives that we're living. So happier is that we have agency, we have control, we have choice in making ourselves happier. And my take on it, and this answers your question of how my book sort of fits into this genre and contributes, is that it is about time. It is about how we spend the hours of our days, how not only the activities that we are spending on, but also how, when we are spending them, we engage to make those hours happier than they would be otherwise. And notably, those hours sum up to our days and then our years and our life overall. So really, the goal is figuring out what little choices we can make today to make it so that at the end of the week, we look back and feel a sense of fulfillment. At the end of our lives, we look back and feel satisfaction and not feel regret.
And now, if you could kind of take it back and regale us with maybe some of the life lessons you learned that have shaped, what you're doing today and how you've done so much research around happiness and time and leading a meaningful life.
For me, a very shitty thing happened where 2 weeks before my wedding, to whom I thought was the love of my life, and this wedding that I had spent a year planning, and everyone was flying in from around the country, and my fiance freaked out and he called me. Literally, my car was packed with wedding dress, with my honeymoon clothes, because I was going down to San Diego, where I'm from, 2 weeks early to get the sort of wedding preparations finalized and get ready. And I'm pulling out, and he called and he's like, Cassie, I'm not ready. Like, I can't get married. And I was like, the heck, dude? I mean, like, I'm understating my reaction. So at that moment, sort of my sunny existence shattered, like my sort of future that I had so perfectly planned out, as well as my emotions, this person that I was in love with and wanting to spend the rest of my life with. And also this wedding that I had to sort of deconstruct in 2 weeks and let everyone know not to show up. It was absolutely devastating. And I did get depressed for a while. And I was like, as someone who is naturally so happy, I was like, wow, I don't want people to have to experience this. And I don't want to experience it for any longer than I have to. And I was like, all right, what can I do to choose to be happier? What can I do to get through this? And looking at the research, which I'd already sort of started in this space I was in a PhD program at Stanford's business school, and starting to look at sort of satisfaction and choice satisfaction and thinking about it from a life perspective, so sort of happiness. But I was like, this is a cult. Like, I need to figure out how can people choose to be happier so that you're not just relying on your natural disposition and personality, that when you're subject to circumstances that are not positive, can we make a choice to be happier? And in fact, we can. And looking across the literature and data, the effects, yes, natural disposition has a big effect. Circumstances have an effect, but a significantly smaller one than we predict. But the thing that has a bigger effect than we predict is what we choose to do and think about in our day-to-day has a significant effect on how we feel in our days and how satisfied we feel about our lives. And so I was like, okay, what can I do? And in particular, how can I spend my time? How can I engage in the time that I'm spending so that I can choose to be happier? And like, again, going back to the title, it's not like happy or unhappy. It is, what can we do to feel better in our lives and about our lives than we would have otherwise? And we do have agency, we do have choice. And that is what sort of propelled me on my research to figure out, how do we do happy? How do we choose happy? That's what I've been doing since.
I want to find out how you discovered your life purpose, and if you can share that in a line or two, and how we can discover ours.
So this is really important because, as we're thinking about how we spend our time, we want to make sure that we're investing ourselves and our hours in ways that help us achieve our purpose, that are in line with those higher order goals. I share an exercise in the book, the 5 Whys exercise, to help folks identify their purpose, because it sounds really lofty and hard. And it's basically answering, why do you do what you do? And then for your answer to that, why is that important? And then your answer to that, why is that important? You ask yourself 5 layers of why. And what that does is it uncovers what truly motivates you. Like, what is that goal that you ultimately have? What impact you want to have? Like, what actually matters? That is so helpful because it's really clarifying of what to say yes to, and more importantly, what to say no to, because there are endless incoming requests and opportunities. And we only have, a finite number of hours in our days and amount of energy that we have available. If you know why you're doing it, if you know the impact, the meaning that it has, that is driven by you, it's not some like general sense of like success. And so by understanding what drives you, you can use that as your metric of success. You can use that as your motivator. So when you see there's a discrepancy, that's what drives you. It's like, oh, I want to live into that and be that. And then when you're doing an activity that might not feel so fun, but you realize why you're doing it and that it is in line with your purpose, then it does feel more fun and worthwhile.
Your course at UCLA is called The Science of Happiness and Life Design. And your students are just so enthusiastic about all that they've learned. I mean, it's derived from Laurie Santos's Psychology and the Good Life at Yale and Bill Burnett and Dave Evans designing your life course at Stanford. And it's something that's so unique and has all these tangible takeaways and allows them to reframe how they're hardwired. So what are some of the takeaways that your students have mentioned have changed their lives?
And the book very much was motivated and sort of captures the important takeaways of the course. And in the book, I give exercises, which are basically the assignments I give my students so that readers can apply and experience the benefits of these insights. Now, I will say that I include all of them because different exercises, different insights resonate differently across people. Part of it is about spending time on activities that matter, on those things that are worthwhile, that actually make you feel satisfied. But oftentimes the question is like, well, I don't know what those are. And so what I encourage folks to do is track their time. So in the research, time tracking is like we look over the course of people's days, what they're doing, as well as how they're feeling. So we can look on average, what are those activities that tend to be associated with the most positive emotion? What are those activities that tend to be associated with the most negative emotion? But that's based off of averages. So what I encourage folks to do, and I have this assignment in the course as well as instructions in the book, is to, over the course of a week, track your time, writing down for each half hour, what are you doing, as well as rating on a 10-point scale, how do you feel coming out of it? And while sort of tedious to do this, it's so powerful because at the end of the week, you have this really wonderful personalized data set. So you can look across your activities and be like, what are those that made me feel best? What were the most satisfying and fulfilling? Also, what are some common dimensions of those activities? So you can really identify sources of satisfaction and fulfillment for you. You can also see just how much time you're spending on your activities. And so oftentimes my students will be like, holy moly, I had no idea that I spent that much time on social media. You think it's like 5 minutes here, and those 5 minutes inevitably are like a half hour and then turn into an hour. And then those hours add up. But I think even more insightful or illuminating is not just how much time they're spending. And I didn't feel that great because they have their ratings right there. And they're like, I thought social media was like my sort of fun time. That's like me time. But when they see that their ratings, like it actually makes them feel like a 4 on a 10-point scale. Meanwhile, they're so busy that they don't have, quote unquote, have time to spend like meeting up with a friend for dinner or to take the kids to get ice cream after school. Yeah. That actually in doing them, you're like, oh, these are my 9s and 10s. These are those fulfilling times. And so the time tracking exercise is really helpful to identify opportunities for reallocating your time towards the activities that are more fulfilling.
I also wanted to touch on writing a eulogy letter. I really love this exercise. And I think a New York Times article I had come across years ago about how it's important to have a eulogy resume, because I think in this culture, this capitalist culture that we're in, oftentimes we're chasing after this accolade, that achievement, that award, that promotion, whatever it may be. But at the end of our life, we're not thinking of those wins. You're thinking of, how much time did you spend with the people who mattered? And so I wrote mine out, and I'd love to share it with you.
Yeah.
And then also hear maybe some lines from yours. Kanika was a giver. She gave her time, her heart, and her whole self to those she loved. As an empath, she felt others' pain and joy so viscerally. She was a devoted mother to her 3 kids, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. She dedicated her life to being a purveyor of stories, whether she was interviewing public figures about their legacy or sharing pearls of wisdom from strangers she'd connect with on the subway. She knew the power of storytelling could break cycles and change lives. Like her mother, she learned to be selfless and follow her dharma. Like her aunt, she was a people person, always connecting others and trying to brighten their day with a kind note or gesture. Like her grandmother, she was meticulous and regimented, connected to the divine, inherently spiritual, and even a little superstitious. She always led with love.
That's beautiful. And absolutely is inspiring. It's not only inspiring to us listening, but, with that clarity of what matters to you and the legacy that you want to leave. And it's really about how you want to show up to people today. It's a clear reflection of that for yourself. And that is so important. That's actually why I have my students do this assignment. It is writing your eulogy, sort of projecting forward to the end of your life, reflecting back, what life do you want to have lived? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to sort of exist in other people's hearts and minds? And I will say that some of my students, and actually one student who's super conscientious came to me and she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do this assignment. I know that it's tied to a grade, but it just gives me great anxiety to think about my death. And I'm like, let's reframe it. Write about the life you want to live, because this is absolutely not about death. It is about life. And it's the life that you want to live. And with that, and we actually find in our research that when people take a broader perspective of time, thinking in terms of years and their life overall, as opposed to hour by hour, they report greater meaning in life, greater satisfaction, as well as greater happiness in their days. And I think that the reason for that, and we have some evidence to suggest, is that by taking this broader perspective, by having, the eulogy exercise is something that is very clarifying of this. It shows what matters to you, what is ultimately important. And so often in our days, we are reacting to and spending our time with respect to what seems urgent, as opposed to, or irrespective of its importance. But when you are very clear on what's important, then that will lead you to spend your hours today on those things and protect time for them. We talked earlier about your mom. It's like that relationship is important, and their kids. It's like understanding what are those ways of engaging with them that really sort of lead you to feel a sense of connection. And it's not all the times and all the activities. And actually the time tracking exercise is really helpful to illuminate what are those times with your kids that actually are really fulfilling and satisfying, so that you can protect time for it. And when you're engaging in it, be totally present, not distracted, so that you're getting the sort of optimal happiness from those hours that are clarified by the life you want to lead.
I'd love for you to share, the story about the professor.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because this is a super helpful analogy to sort of carry in our minds. And it is about prioritization. And it's nicely shown in a short film that I share in the first day of my class. And in the film, a professor walks into his classroom, and on the desk at the front of the class, he puts a large clear jar. And then from a bag on the side, he has golf balls and he pours the golf balls into the jar. So you reach the very top and he asks the students, is the jar full? And the students nod their head because yes, the jar looks full, but nope. From the bag, he pulls out pebbles and he pours the pebbles into the jar and they fill the spaces between the golf balls up to the very top. And he asks the students again, is the jar full? And the students nod because yes, the jar looks full, but nope. From the bag, he pulls out sand and he pours the sand into the jar and it fills all those spaces between the golf balls, between the pebbles, up to the very top. And he asks the students again, is the jar full? And by this point, the students are like laughing. They're like, yes, the jar is full. And then, but there's one more step. He pulls out 2 bottles of beer. He opens one, pours it into the jar. He opens the other. And then he sort of walks and perches himself at the front of the desk. And he takes a sip and he explains, this jar represents the time of your life. The golf balls are all those things that really matter to you, your relationships with your family, like your friendships, the work you do that is in line with your purpose and your passions. The pebbles are the other things in your life that matter, like your job, your house. The sand is everything else. The sand is all of that stuff that fills your time without you even thinking about it. Maybe it is social media. Maybe it is binge watching TV. Maybe it is all those committees or requests that you said yes to just because it was easier to say yes than no. Whatever it is. But what's really important to know is had he put the sand into the jar first, all of the golf balls would not have fit. If we let our time get filled, it absolutely will get filled, but not necessarily with the stuff that matters. And in fact, it won't even leave time for all of those golf balls. You won't have enough time for those things that really matter to you. So it's so important to identify what are your golf balls? What are those things that matter to you? And that gets clarified in like the eulogy exercise. It gets clarified in time tracking. Put those into your schedule first. Like protect time, like in your calendar for these things, because sand will fill the rest. Absolutely, it will. But at least at the end of the week, you'll be able to look back, even if busy, you'll be able to look back and feel fulfilled and satisfied because you have invested in what matters, in those relationships, in that work that you ultimately care about. And then one of the students was like, well, professor, what's the deal with the beer? And he's like, I'm so glad you asked. That goes to show that no matter how busy you feel, how full your time and schedule seems, you always have time for a drink with a friend.
Oh,
I think is also an important lesson that there are these things that matter that we do ultimately have time for and we need to make the time for.
tell us a little bit about your motherhood journey.
I mean, I am so in love with my 2 kids, Lita, who is now 7, and Leo, who is 10. But the journey is a tough one. And particularly because of what we've talked about already of like the role of time poverty. Like I had Leo when I was still an assistant professor, so working really hard to get tenure. And I actually opened the book sharing this experience where I was still on the faculty at Wharton, an assistant professor. I had traveled up to give a talk in New York, and it was just such a crazy, harried day. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, between wanting to be connected and a good parent, and then the work and partner and friends and all that sort of stuff. It's like, I don't think I can do this. And I considered quitting. And so I didn't quit. Instead, I redirected my research to figure out how do we invest our hours so that we do feel satisfaction, so that we're not rushing through these moments with these people that we love. And I am so grateful that I didn't quit and I stuck with it. And it wasn't at the cost of my relationships with my family, because I'm very purposeful. And I share in the book some ways that I spend, like my weekly coffee date with Lita is this routine that we turned into a ritual. And it's so special. It's each week. We protect this time, and we have our coffee date playlist, and we, order the same thing. And it is time where it's just the 2 of us to sort of soak each other up and be together. And while I can't be in the carpool pickup line at 3 any day because of my work, I'm absolutely connected and we have this wonderful relationship. And I would actually say one of my proudest moments in this whole book experience was when the box of the actual books arrived and I went and to give Lita a kiss goodnight after she was asleep. And I saw that she had the book on the pillow next to her. And what it made me so proud is that she's proud. So I stuck with the work. And so they are proud of the work that I do, but also it wasn't at the cost of our relationship. And so that is something that I am so proud of, that we can, if we are intentional, if we are thoughtful, if we prioritize the golf balls, including the work that's important to us, and we protect ourselves from the sand. There's absolutely, things that I am not doing and failing at. Like my inbox is just a mess and I will never get through it. And I won't respond to some people. And I feel badly about that. But otherwise, if I don't protect the time for, my coffee dates, the work that will actually make progress on what my purpose, and with my husband, and Leo, all to say it's been a ride, but I live the research findings. I live what I am advising folks to do in the book. And I am absolutely satisfied and feel connected with my kids and my family.
Tell us about a mom sense moment you had. And by that, I mean a time that you trusted your intuition when it came to being a parent.
I think it is the intuition of having fun. And that's actually, it's like going back to my childhood and my sort of joy, and that it's okay. It's sort of giving myself the permission to be silly with the kids. That's sort of following myself and my gut as when I'm with the kids, as opposed to this sort of general notion of what I should be doing.
I love that. I think that's so important. And where can my listeners find you and your first book?
My website, CassieMHolmes.com. I am on LinkedIn, but I'm not really on social media otherwise, because I have identified through my time tracking that social media is not a source of happiness for me. But on my website, and honestly, I am excited about the book because it really sort of pulls so much of these learnings together so that folks can dig in and apply it and hopefully feel happier in their hours and more satisfied in their lives.
Thank you, Cassie. Thanks for enlightening us with your story, with your strategies and philosophy. I'm sure all parents who are listening are just breathing a sigh of relief because you've now made us time rich and giving agency to us over our happiness and leading a meaningful life.
Thanks so much for having me. This was super fun.